put this to recording. And obviously, as I mentioned, that we will be converting even this video, which we are right now recording, into a podcast format, and it will be available across formats as we go along. Okay, so firstly, my sincere and a long-standing good evening to all of you. It's been a while we did this at IPN. Having said this, we can't keep away from you for too long. I was actually traveling a lot on IPN Manthan as well. But nevertheless, since we are here, let me quickly take a moment or two to introduce a couple of things. One is I have to introduce my guest, and I also have to introduce to you this entire concept of IPN Podcast, so that as we go along in this journey of running these podcasts, we will invite a lot of guests. And sometimes the guests, sometimes, maybe all the time, those guests will be people who you want to listen to, okay? Which means that after this conversation, and even every time we send you the registration forms, there is one last question which says that kindly share with us which leader you would love to listen on IPN Podcast. Okay, so whenever you feel so that you want to share that person, please do send in. Do not write in Mr. Barack Obama. I may not be able to get him for you. Okay, but nevertheless, whatever you will write, I will try to reach out to those people and try to get them for you. Okay. Now, having said this, I'll come to the important part of this second half of my introduction, which is introducing Mrs. Burman. And I'll also give you a little context why she's my first guest, because that's very important to also understand, right? Out of the people I know, why I chose Mrs. Burman to be on this first podcast of ours. But before I go there, I'll quickly introduce Mrs. Burman. So Mrs. Amrita Burman is at present the Deputy Director of Sunbeam Group of Institutions in Varanasi. She's based out there, and I believe she's been with the institution for almost 2+ decades, I believe so. If I'm incorrect, ma'am will correct me as we go along, okay? Now, apart from the standard awards, not so many awards for that matter, she has a very, very decorated career. And more importantly, she's risen from the ranks of being a teacher to now a very distinguished administration person at the Sunbeam Group. I have personally seen the journey of Sunbeam. I mean, obviously, I've just seen a bit of it, but I can certainly make a lot of, I would say, observations around it. And I can certainly, with all my sincerity, can say this to you that Mrs. Burman, along with the leadership team of Sunbeam Group, has been instrumental in not just making IPN a household name, at least a known name in UP, but across the length and breadth of the country, I would say. So Sunbeam is a brand, and that brand needs a lot of people behind the scene working on it. And I think one of them is Mrs. Burman. And apart from that, Mrs. Burman, I personally feel that is a very strong torch bearer or a very, I would say, someone who's really, really given our school system also a lot of things which we usually do not appreciate, or sometimes we take it for granted, that she has been working at the private sector school education in India, contributing in her humble capacity by I would say, training a lot of educational leaders, etc., etc. So I think that is also a contribution we should remember and appreciate for that matter. Right now, if that is the introduction of her, so which means that I really hold her in very high regards, number one. And number two, why is she here as my first guest? So you all know me maybe a couple of years down the line, or possibly say 2019 or 20. Majority of you actually know me since the COVID era. But my journey or association with Mrs. Burman goes to 2013 or 14, if I can say. That is the time I was starting out my venture, a very, very humble beginning. One of the cities I visited at that point in time was Varanasi. And if I may say in a very simple way, that any startup when you run, or any initiative which you take up for the first time, it is very difficult to really get the right people appreciating it and even giving you the right support at the right time. So one of, I would not say one of, possibly she's the first one who really, really appreciated what we were doing. And she supported me by actually in many other ways, I would say, by guiding me, by possibly giving me my first account of working at Sunbeam and all that stuff, and which really, really helped me as an entrepreneur, and which is very, very big support for any entrepreneur. If today when I have this opportunity of helping anybody, I truly know how it means and how much valuable it is. So therefore, she to me is a beyond an academician. She's a true guide or a friend to me in a sense. So thank you very much, Mrs. Burman. Lovely to have you. I know it got a bit elongated as an introduction, but it makes a lot of sense to even do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so as I mentioned, that this will be very, very informal, right? Wherein we will love to know her beyond her role or capacity as an educator, which majority of you know. So I'll begin with my first question. And since a lot of you have joined in now, let me quickly tell you how we will do this, which is that initial first half, which is 30 to 45 minutes, we will devote towards asking, I will ask those questions to Mrs. Burman, and she'll very candidly would love to answer those, right? And then good majority of our second half, we will keep it for all of you, which is that you can really ask as many questions as you can. Obviously, we'll try to close this by latest 6:10 at the max, so that we all can get back to whatever we were doing. So with that, I will begin with my first question, which is, Mrs. Burman, I obviously know this, that you were raised in Calcutta. So I would really love to know, and in fact, everyone here would love to know that while you were growing up in Calcutta, where did your schooling, your graduation, please run us through that bit of the story. We would love to hear that from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, first of all. Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much, Gaurav. And thank you so much, everyone. I'm absolutely humbled and honored to know that, there were some people who wanted to know about my personal journey and my personal life. So that really makes me really honored, and thank you so much for that. Coming to Gaurav in the first place, I think our journey, and I mention this every time I'm on IPN, our journey has been, I think, very symbiotic. There's a lot that I have got to learn from him. Obviously, it's both ways. When you interact, when you collaborate, there's so much that you get to learn. There's so much that I get to learn from the IPN platform, because I make it a point most of the time to enter into all the different webinars. Sometimes I'm speaking, sometimes I'm not, but I think it's so important also to listen. I think there are some great leaders out there who have so much to share. So thank you so much, Gaurav, for this platform, collaborating. And I think collaboration is the key to almost all success today. So thank you so much for making this happen. Coming to my own personal life, yes, I am from Kolkata. Difficult for me today even to say Kolkata. Calcutta still comes out, on my tongue. So from Kolkata, and born and brought up there. I went to a school which is called Our Lady Queen of the Missions. I'm particularly mentioning that, and till class 10, it never had a +2 then, so I had to move on. For 2 years, I was at the Loreto College. I did my political science honors from there. Then I moved on to do my master's from the university. Then I did my MBA also from IMM. And then I also did my French side by side. When I was doing my graduation, I also completed my diploma in French. So why I'm particularly trying to mention a few things is because each of these phases had a huge role to play in my life. Let me also tell you a little bit about my family, and then I'll mix the two. So I come from a very small but very forward-looking family. My family, my parents were both educated. My mother came from Malaysia. So she had her education in Malaysia. She was an Indian origin, but from Malaysia. So her outlook towards life was very different. My father came from Pakistan, came to India during the partition. So I have grown up listening to stories of the partition. So for me, actually, when he speaks about being helped by people from different communities, and I am sure people understand what I'm talking about, secularism is completely a part of my life, because I think, and that's something that I've been able to spread to the students, because I feel that religion is very personal. I've grown up with that. And every human being is a good human being. And that's the way you should look at human beings. So, this aspect of my parents had a very important role to play in my life. Besides that, they always thought girls must be educated. Specifically, my dad, he said girls should be educated, girls should have a profession. More so because there are many girls who are unfortunate who can't get that. So if I can give this to my girls, it's very important. I have a sister too. So both of us were educated, sent to the best educational institutions, and were, of course, always pushed to have a career of their own. We were also, because of the fact that, he had been a victim to a large extent of the partition, we lived quite, with a lot of abundance as such. But at the same time, we were always taught to be thrifty. Every aspect of our lives, we had to fight for it. We never got anything very easy. So whether it was basic travel in the city, going to college, going to school, we had to sometimes go by foot. Sometimes it used to be floods and I used to walk all the way down because there was no room for sympathy in our life. We were always pushed to do things on our own and fend for ourselves. So I think all these aspects of my family life and my education made a lot of difference. I also went, when I mentioned about Our Lady Queen of the Missions, it was a school that was a missionary school. So again, like all missionary schools, specifically at that time, very forward looking, great English. Teachers were very good. They knew what they were talking about. Our education was, really in depth. And I learned in my own classrooms without actually going to any educational college at that time, that good education means that teachers teach you to the core. There was no technology, but there was no compromise on understanding what was being taught to us. The teacher was thorough and she made us thorough. The other very good aspect of that school was it was a small school. I mentioned that initially. And what happened was that when I started my career at Sunbeam, I started with a very small school. And many people used to complain about space. And I always knew how small schools could be run because that's the way I had been educated. So space was never a challenge for me. Even today, I just keep moving around my school and I keep looking for spaces that can be turned into places where children can learn. So that aspect of my life has played very strong, in my educational career too. So after which, of course, I think I didn't mention, but for plus two, I went to a school which is Modern High, which was a Birla school. So I changed my board. I was in ICSC, moved to the West Bengal board. And again, that taught me early in life that sometimes you just need to change and it's okay. Did well, was academically good, managed to do very well. And another very important thing in my life was that I was always very academically oriented. Given the choice, I would have just continued studying. Of course, I did take up a career later, but the fact is that I was very, very academically oriented. And that was another very important part when it came to me choosing this profession. I'll talk about it a little later. But I think education just came as a part of my life because I thought that every bit that I have should be put to service, should be put to good use. So that's about my little journey, my early.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure people who have joined in, and obviously this is a revelation for me as well, that your mom was in, as in she was raised in Malaysia, and your father was from the Pakistan side, if I may say. He migrated and came to India. What a lovely, that is something very good to know, firstly, to begin with. And obviously Calcutta have an integral part of your life, for that matter, right? So these are three cities which are very important for you. Good, fabulous. So lot to talk about, Mrs. Burman, but I'll come to my next question, as I said, because we have this time constraint to play with. How, in fact, right? How and what really prompted you to firstly take this job of being a teacher or being into the school education, or say any form of education? What really prompted? What was that trigger for you?
So it will be very interesting for everyone to know that I really never dreamt to be a teacher at all. We keep telling this to many people. Even I tell this when I'm hiring, that are you going to be a teacher by choice or by chance? Actually, it was not a choice. It was a chance that I came into this profession. When I got married and I came to Varanasi, there weren't too many opportunities at that time at all in Varanasi. And as I had mentioned, I was always pushed to have a career, to be a professional. I wanted to work. I didn't want to waste my life because my family was being well taken care of. So it wasn't really much of an issue at that stage. So I decided to work. A school became, like for many people in small towns, a very natural choice because of the lack of choices. So I started as a teacher of class 3. I started teaching English, and more so, the school at that time, like many schools even today in Varanasi, even a few of our own schools, ran in double shifts. So I was teaching in class 3. Then I was told that you'll only get this job if you can also teach French to class 9, which was in the second shift. Okay. So I had to say yes to this after giving it a thought. That means I had to go in the morning, I had to teach class 3, I had to stay back when everybody went back home, and then stay on, teach French to class 9. So stay on for another extra 1 or 2 hours, and then go back home. So I had the longest duration in the school at that time. And I realized it's quite interesting actually. Teaching has been a little bit of fun. And I think the academic part in me started telling me that, I think there's so much you could do with the children. There's so much of a difference you could make in children's lives. So why not? After which, of course, for some reason, I had to take a small break and then come back again. Now, when I came back, I taught again for a few days, and then I was offered an administrative post. I was asked whether I could be a coordinator for the junior school, and I thought it's interesting. Let me try this too, and I started really enjoying administration in education. Frankly, I enjoyed that more than being a teacher.
Okay.
After which, pretty soon I was offered the post of a principal. And then after a few years, I became a director at Sunbeam. So, what really, really got me excited was academic administration. I was always interested in academics. I had done my MBA. Administration was another part of my life, which I really enjoyed. So when there was a marriage of these two, when it was academic administration, I thought, okay, possibly I didn't realize, but this is what I always wanted to do. So I have always done academic administration. Another thing I think that I enjoyed was made it pretty much into a life mantra because I enjoyed what I was doing and also at the place where I was working. I have never thought of changing my job because I think I got all the respect, I got all the space to work, and I got an environment to work. And I think that made a lot of difference because I always keep telling people it's absolutely okay to change jobs. I don't stand up against that. But if you really want to make a difference, be where you are, because if you keep moving too often, you genuinely don't make a difference. And our profession is one where we always have to stand up to make a difference in children's life, and that takes time. It's a time consuming job.
Absolutely.
So I just enjoy what I'm doing and where I am.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. So this is again one more thing to get. I mean, know that Mrs. Burman never wanted to be a teacher, but this was right by not by design. This was maybe not even by choice, purely because she was in Varanasi and this was the only option available to her. And again, I think she did not mention she is mother to two young, lovely daughters. In fact, and I got to know today that her sibling is a, if I may say right. I mean, obviously of the same nature, right? So number one, these are all things which I getting to know today, and that is the beauty of this conversation. Lovely. So, Mrs. Burman, since I think the Sunbeam leadership team was a hard taskmaster to you initially as well, which was that they made you work twice, baby, right? Which is from on a condition from first to second. But then that's it. I'm sure you must have learned a lot in that phase to begin with. And I'm happy that you brought this point up, which is that please stick to a job. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of young teachers in this dialogue as well. And there are few of my people as well. And I would love to have this thing to pass as a message passed on to them as well. Job hopping is not a great idea, right? Shwetambri is here, Vijeta must be here. So they are also listening very carefully. Okay, so I'll move on to my next question, which is again, since you've really taken up. So how long were you there as a teacher by any chance?
I was there as a teacher for about 4 years. That's
4 years. Okay, that's substantial. Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there on, you have been mostly
Then
on the
that was my
administrative job. Okay.
Yes.
So Mrs. Burman, then this comes to me as a natural question that when someone is taking up a job of being a teacher, example, right? So it will be a twofold question. One is that what do you see as a leader in a teacher, number one, while you may know that this is not his or her first choice, example, right? And in our country, that is the irony that right now, majority of the population is on that side. They do not really come to teaching as a profession as their first choice, right? So especially when we know this precursor or a precondition in mind, what do you still see, or what do you see these are the bare minimums I would have to have before I take this person into my system? What will be that?
So when I'm really hiring someone, and when I'm looking for qualities in people, first of all, I think I must mention here, I think, which is true for most academicians who've been in that job in hiring for a long time, you do get some sort of an intuitive sense, because you deal so much with human beings that the moment you meet them, there's something that tells you whether this person is right or this person is not right for your for your institution. So that intuitive sense always plays, but what I genuinely look for is attitude. And while I speak to them, I listen a lot. The questions may be very simple, to ask them about what they really would like to give to the profession once they join it. I always look for an attitude, and I tell my own people, who are also of course helping in hiring, that, for me, a teacher whose knowledge is okay, not top of the line, inexperienced, okay. But if the attitude is okay, experience will be gained, knowledge can be gained also. It's not very tough these days. But if the attitude is wrong and the person has got some doctoral degree, I don't care. I don't want to appoint such a person. Because you can always turn people around in their other weaknesses, but attitudes, I think, is very, very difficult to change, because it is pretty much embedded from as more of a natural thing, unless you're somebody who's really taken the pains of reading and going through lots and lots of training to change your attitude. It takes long to change attitude. So for me, hiring first is attitude. The other is honesty towards work. You have to be honest. I just don't like people whose values are compromised. If your values are compromised, what are you going to transpire to your students? So even little things, of being disciplined yourself, coming to class on time, being well prepared, taking your job seriously. If you come well prepared, you tell the students that I care for you. I want to make a difference in your life, and therefore I take my job seriously, and therefore I want you, dear children, to take what you're doing seriously. So it's the kind of work ethics that you have that's important. And I think one of the two last things for me when I hire people is, one, are they creative and want to push the envelope? For which they have to be great learners. Are they learners? If they are, I think they'll be very, very successful. So these basic things are, I think, which is true for any profession, it's very, very important. So they need not have gone to the best B.Ed colleges. It doesn't bother.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely. There is no replacement to attitude. But just to I mean, put you in a little, I would say, spot. When you say attitude, can you give me an example? What is for you, in a sense, or an example which you possibly can give it to us? Where do you see the attitude is right or it is wrong? Example.
So, when you speak to people, why did you come into this profession? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
maybe choice chance is a different thing.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
the reason why you chose this is very
Okay.
important. When you start asking these questions and you keep pushing questions, you can find out about attitude. For somebody who's already worked somewhere, left and come, when
Mhm.
you prod them and you ask them why did they leave, that gives speaks volumes about attitudes.
Okay.
Many of them say, I wanted this and I didn't get it. And then you see that they've job hopped, and I always tell them, how do you think that my institution will be any different? Somebody will pull you here also. Somebody will tell you that it's right or it's not right here also. So are you sure you're ready to take this in? So I think the moment you start asking these questions, you do tend to get their attitudes. Plus, we always ask our teachers to write about some case studies. We give them some case study questions and ask them to write about it. I don't read too much, but I always read the case study questions. I want to know, if a child is in a spot, what would your attitude be towards that child to turn that child around? And from that, you get to know whether the person is really a right fit for entering a classroom and being in touch with the lives and souls of so many students or no. So, attitude for me, most important.
Wonderful. So since I'll continue on this question a little more, which is once this person is in your system, example, now what do you expect this person to really be working on further from there on? Example, this is the starting point. These are the skill set he or she possesses. Attitude is right. Then what, as a leader, do you expect from your guys? Example,
So,
or
as a leader, I expect my teachers to be uh, continuously learning. I
okay,
think it's very, very important for them to realize that they need to be adaptive, that things around them are changing, and you're dealing with young children. You have to know what attracts children, what interests children. So, even if it's, say, things like soccer, or it's possibly the latest movie that's going around, or it's cricket, or whatever, are you really taking the pains of learning the interest of students? Because that becomes the start point in a conversation in a class. If you
absolutely.
can hold the attention of students the moment you enter the class, if you speak the lingo that the children want to expect you to speak or want to hear, I think you simply strike a chord. So the first thing is, are you finding out the interest of students and learning their lingo? That's one thing the teachers have to constantly do.
Correct.
The other thing I expect my teachers always to do is to learn technology. Today, without learning technology, the right use of technology, the right balance of the use of technology in the class, it is very difficult to be a good teacher, because children are expecting that and we all know the benefits of it. Okay, so that's another thing that I expect them to do. The third thing I expect my teachers to go very seriously, and we're very strict about it, is learning on your job. How many courses have you taken to teach yourself? And frankly, there's a lot that the institution, of course, pumps in terms of, paying for a lot of their fees for them to learn. I also ask them, okay, the institution has spent so much. How much have you spent on yourself? Because what you've learned, I can't take it away from you. You're going to carry it with you. It's going to benefit you wherever you go. So how important learning on the job is for yourself is defined also by the amount of time, money, and effort you put in learning for yourself. That also shows attitudes towards your job. So these are the things that they have to. And I think one of the last things is, you have to keep telling them, you have to be empathetic towards children. The child is at the center. If you deviate from your focus of the child, you've lost it and you can't afford to do that.
Wonderful. That is, with that specific question, I would say we got your mind share in terms of, right, what a teacher really needs to invest in. And I think that these are all universal sort of principles. It is applicable not just in Sunbeam, they're actually applicable for each and every teacher across the board, right? So some wonderful advice there, right? Now, Mrs. Burman, maybe couple of more questions from my side, and then I'll open up the house, which is one is now you can very well see there is a lot of change which our country is witnessing at this point in time. I mean, post the NEP sort of coming in vogue, right? So given you are in thick of action, given you hold this position which you do, and you are at the center of a lot of action at your level, as per you, not at a very micro level, but at a very macro level, fundamentally, what are these couple of things, or maybe at the max 3 things, we as a nation need to work on our school education system example. If we have to get this piece together right, which is one of them is obviously NEP implementation, but that's very, very transactional, I would say, or an ongoing process. But if there is a young leader in this audience or someone who is already a principal, what are the other aspects of Indian school education system can you possibly highlight for us? Yeah.
So, if I get your question right, it's about the changes that we are looking forward. Of course, NEP speaks a lot about it. So, NEP implementation, if brought in the right way, I truly believe it is going to be brought in the right way. I've been very optimistic about it. It is going to make a lot of difference and a change. I've been lucky to travel to Finland and to many other countries where good education is there. So, few things I think which really is to be implemented in India. First and the foremost, I think, is the salary structure, which of course the NB does talk about. Um, Most of the private schools, unfortunately, do not follow what is the rule and the salary structure that should be implemented. So the first thing is, I think the private sector schools must better their salary structure. More than that, for the whole nation, when they talk about equitable salary for all different levels of teaching, I think, which NEP mentions, that is a revolution in the education industry. Because I think, unfortunately, people get respect from the salary that they draw. Many children today do not want to take up this profession because they feel that if I take up something else, even if I'm an entrepreneur, or I go in and join an MNC, etc., etc., I'm probably going to be drawing far, far more money. And look at a teacher struggles all his or her life, and what does a poor thing manage to get at the end of the day? So salary structure for me, I think, is the most important thing. The moment the salaries go up, the respect for this job, the demand for this job is automatically going to go up. So I think that's the first thing that we need to do. Secondly, I think we as teachers also, as career counselors, having career counseling in our school, have career counseling for everything. We never do career counseling for a child to be a teacher. So I think what's very important is we need to push this fact that a teacher as a career is a great career, gets you a lot of respect. You make a difference in children's lives. So we must really push this as a career, as leaders ourselves in education. And one of the 1, 2, 3 last few things that's needed. We really need to improve our B.Ed colleges. The 4-year B.Ed that has been now spoken about by NEP, I think is going to completely change the way the teaching profession is going to be seen. Because once you're out of +2 and you choose, then at that stage of your life, to be a teacher and directly enter into a B.Ed college, not after doing your graduation, that means that you are sold to the idea of being a teacher. So when you're sold to the idea of being a teacher, there are chances that you will be a better teacher than somebody else who, obviously goes to it by chance. So I think our B.Ed colleges need to really improve. Plus, what we teach in the B.Ed colleges also needs to improve. I think a lot of the hackneyed theories need to go out. The new ones need to come in. The other thing that's needed and was there, again, was taken away. For example, we had the CTET, which every teacher at one stage had to pass after every 5 years. And then, of course, like a lot of pressure, it went out of the window. It wasn't really important. Okay, even if you do it once, it's all right. But I think, like all other progressive countries, taking a public exam once in 5 years for every teacher is important, because that is what will keep the teachers on their toes to learn the latest, to appear for an examination after studying it. And then the natural thing will be to apply all these theories, case studies, action research that you've done to the classes. It's important. Last, I think where we really suffer as a nation is very, very poor inclusivity in our classes. I think Indian education needs to be very, very, very inclusive. We are not as inclusive as we should be. We are very mainstream. Schools which are progressive, even they, I feel, have inclusivity only as a tip. Quite a few of them, I don't say all, some are doing an amazing job, but most of them have inclusivity only as a tip. And children who are challenged really get sidelined in our nation, which I think is very sad.
Wonderful. In fact, I think salary reforms or standardization is such a big question everywhere, badly needed at least, I would say. We've traveled to almost 11 centers under IPN Manthan. Every center, this was one of the points which always came in, no matter where we went. So I think, and obviously, everything else which you said makes a lot of sense, and which is why I put that question up, that apart from the NEP implementation, which right now, if you talk to any educator in India, what is he doing? He or she is doing NEP implementation. So that's good in the sense, but obviously we have to keep our eyes and ears open, and there are other things to be even catching
So
up.
I just want to add there,
Yeah.
without taking too much of time.
Sure.
NEP is excellent, it's brilliant, but at one of your manthans, I think in Lucknow, I did mention this, that what NEP is speaking about is really nothing out of the box thinking, frankly. It's something that people have been talking about. Progressive schools have been doing it. And NEP should not be considered as the only document that you need to work on. You can move beyond NEP. There's
Absolutely.
so much we can do. And when we believe that we can't go beyond a particular boundary, I think that's where we make our mistakes as educators. Do what you want. I think this government itself has given you a lot of freedom till a particular level.
No, that's a word. I think that's a very powerful word, which you said, that, I mean, let's not restrict ourselves to only NEP for that matter, right? And there can be a lot of other things which you can be doing. I think, I mean, because this is right now about you, and actually NEP to me as well personally is more of an attitudinal and a mind shape document. If you don't do that, there is no point even reading the document further from there on if you are not really ready for that. Okay, so maybe this wasn't really something which I had planned, but this is a question which comes to me very, very straightforward. So given an example, right now, Miss Burman looks very invincible. Example, the moment Mrs. Burman is little shaky, I mean, every one of us have bad days. How do you lift your moods up when you're not doing well, example, or how someone should lift him or herself up, for example, if it's not a Sunday like day at work, right? How do you do that?
So we're all human beings. We all have our good days. We all have our bad days. There
Correct.
are days when you want to achieve something you can't, or otherwise it's been. So there are few things that I do. I talk a lot to myself. I think I've trained myself over many years after attending workshops, etc. Take a break, take that deep breath, sit aside, because then I tend to lose my cool also. So it's better to be away from people, speak to yourself, come out of your mood. Things that help me to come out of a bad mood
Correct.
is music. I just love listening to good music. So
Okay.
my evening walks with music is my catharsis and probably the most creative time for me. I do a lot of thinking when I do that. I try and keep my body fit. So if I'm really down, then it's also exercising, just going out, doing something, doing my yoga. So I think these are the things that you have to just take a little shift from what you do always, because I think it also helps you to understand that you're feeling down not necessarily because of someone else. Most of the time I realize that the other person is right, was right, maybe I overreacted. I need so for that you have to move yourself away from the situation, look at it very objectively, to realize that there are quite a few changes that you need to bring in your own attitude. And I think it's worked. And another one thing, I if there has been a mistake that I have made, I have trained myself over the years that don't live with this problem, don't spoil relations, just get up, whoever the person may be, and say sorry. I think the power of saying sorry is very, very powerful. It just mends things and it makes relationship grow even better, even if you had a little showdown with someone. So I really, really feel that it's good to just get up and say sorry. It changes moods.
That's a wonderful advice, and I'm so happy it came from you. And I'm sure the power of sorry and power of and I would say one more thing which I remember about sorry is so underrated. We do not rate it very highly. So wonderful. And I think I have exhausted my time of asking you question, but I'll ask you one more. Anything specifically you're reading right now? Your recommendations to educators which you possibly can or they will love to read?
See,
Exactly.
what I'm reading right now is about Indira Nooyi. It's her life, and so I think it's a beautiful book which I'd recommend people to read. But when it comes to educationists, I think one book that every educationist should read is Cleverland, which I always recommend because it talks about the best educational systems all over the world, and I think it's something we should all read because not everyone can reach everywhere, but you'll get to see the best systems in the world. It really helps you in implementing a few very simple things in your own classroom. So Cleverland is a book that I think every
Cleverland.
educationist
Okay. Wonderful.
must read. Yes.
Wonderful. So for the benefit of all of you who are attending it, we'll possibly note that down and send it to you on IPN as well. One last question. I'm little. Uh, I would say I'm having few more questions coming in my mind, just but I'll keep this one as my final question. This is, in fact, I did send you that as well. One thing as a leader or one lesson of leadership, only one I would say, which you really, really keep close to your heart, and you say this is my mantra or leadership example.
So I have learned this very early in my career. Try, if it's possible, not to say no to anything. I think opportunities don't knock twice on your door. And this is, I think, mainly for younger ones. Because by the time you become experienced, there are times when you feel I want to say no because I've taken up too much. I think that's all right if you feel that you've bitten more than you can chew. But otherwise, don't say no to anything because the moment you say the yes, the power of the yes also opens opportunities. And I think you can really go up the ladder because it gives you an opportunity to prove your own mettle and what you can do. So I think it's good never to say no in your work.
And let me validate this to everybody here. And I have really worked with her, as I said, right? 7 or 8 years now I've known Mrs. Burman. I don't think so. I remember she really have ever said no to anything which I've asked her to. I said, I'm doing first podcast. Yes. So I think either you have disabled in your dictionary no, or you have whatever you have done it. But having said it, it's a good habit. It's a great lesson for me as well. I will actually take this back for myself that many a times we become a little calculative and say, okay, isko evaluate karte hain and all that stuff. But I think power of yes is far more stronger. Thank you very much, Mrs. Burman. I will open up the house for now. Everybody, please have a virtual show of hand. We'll help you unmute and you can ask your question or anything which you want to share with Mrs. Burman. We can do that for you. Okay. And also my request that when you are asking your question, let's come on video and have a brief sort of an introduction, and then we can get to know you a little better, and then you can ask your question or an observation. And you can also share your view on what she's shared with us.
Sure.
Virtual show of hand, I'm sure, or where are we? Reactions in the section called reactions. If you can just put that I have disabled. By the way, I have disabled chat because we really want to listen to you in verbal way, right? Otherwise, I would have had 100 good evenings by now. So I really do not like that. Hence, the chats have been disabled. So someone is asking me again. Okay, there is a compliment which is coming. Okay, Abhaji, you are asking me which is DPS. Someone from DPS Raipur has mentioned, sent me excellent reply to all the question. Wonderful experience. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Geeta. Abhaji, yes,
When
please go ahead.
Good evening, Mrs. Burman. It's always a pleasure to hear you every time. I am really very good fan of yours. I really wanted to reiterate the same thing which you have said. The thing which you said कि we have to be polite and humble. Like मनभेद हो नहीं होना चाहिए, मतभेद हो सकता है. That I also appreciate. And the thing which you have just said, never say no to anything which comes your way. This is what even I have learned from my father in law. He has taught me this thing. And I really appreciate and I try to imbibe that in my activities also. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was lovely hearing you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I think, again, the option of people are asking me about the book. I think it's Neverland, right?
Cleverland. I'll just give you
Cleverland. Cleverland. We have repeated
Cleverland.
again. We will post this
I
video as well, and we will post the name of the books or the highlights of the conversation to you, so you all get a glimpse of it. Yes. Anybody quickly? Let's have few questions, everybody, right? So that we can. We still have what 14 odd minutes with us. Yeah. I was. Any question or any observation, if you feel you want to ask Mrs. Burman, so that we can give you that sort of an option, we can, or even if you have any observation about what she said, or you want to validate that example, right? So virtual show of hand, and then we'll help you unmute and you can ask your question instead of writing it to me on the chat, please. Yes, that's better of any one of you.
So Cleverlands, while people are still thinking, Cleverlands is by Lucy Crehan, Crehan, and it's available, of course, on Amazon and everywhere. It's a lovely book. You must read, and it talks about the Singapore, it talks about the Japanese, Finland, of course, system of education. It's really interesting. It's a very interesting book.
Okay, wonderful. So in the meanwhile, if you all are thinking about your questions or observation, then I will have few more questions if you allow me to, because no, good. I'm happy that someone is, yeah. Ruchi, please ask your question.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. I'm really sorry. I'm on the way, therefore I won't be able to switch
No
my
problem.
video on. And it's really nice to have you all once again, ma'am, as well, because I have seen her always in all the programs, all the like Zoom meetings, whenever we have our meetings and all. So it's really nice seeing you. And whenever it was a meeting or it was a like session with someone else, but she was always having something to add into it. So it's really great that today I have just her only sharing her views and just knowing about her. It's really great. Thank you so much. I was really eagerly waiting for a session with IPN, and I really feel so refreshing. And I was on the way coming back to my home from school, but I just thought that I should not miss, because after so long it has happened. So anyhow, I have to attend. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much, ma'am. It was really nice.
Thank you so much. Thank
So
you.
wonderful. We've been doing telepathy, and we are figuring out what you really want from us. So I'm happy that we could deliver on your understanding. But having said this, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Ruchi ji, and go safely wherever you are headed. Uh, okay, so as I was saying that if you all permit me, then I'll ask my question again. As I said, I'm getting questions on my chat. That is what I am getting. I'm reading it. Uh, I think we have to create the teachers in India by choice, not by chance, by giving the good opportunity, respect, and definitely providing good salary. And definitely, I'm very supportive and I agree with the great speaker. Wonderful session. Okay, that's again a compliment. Okay, so firstly, I think my question to Mrs. Burman, which is again, as I said, a continuation to it. One is that uh, I was very recently traveling, and I just want to pick your brains as well on this. That currently, if you look at, there are few things which in our country, in particular, which are touching the border. I would say this is a question, little offbeat, but I'll still want your inputs on this. Is that how does eventual answer is that how will the school play a role in it eventually? That now one of the fundamental thing I personally feel that our country looks somewhere or the other little fractured in terms of views. I mean, I am for the word of a better word, I would say. I think people are really, I mean, possibly missing the core that there is a nation first to begin with. I would say, right? and then your own identity with respect to what faith you follow, what community you come from, etc., right? And when we even read the first vision or a principle or other documents part of NEP, they actually talk about the Indian ethos, all said and done, right? And if you don't do that, every form of education is absolutely, I don't think so it is education then. So my question again, maybe I'll rephrase it in a sense, what sort of initiatives can educators take in order to really instill this, what I call it, not patriotism, but at least love for our country to be first priority? What all initiatives can we do? I mean, I'm finding this little personally disturbing at times. I will not make that as a remark, but I went to a section of people I met. They represent a very particular section of our society, but I have found them to be very alienated and thought they were not really part of India.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
will not have your
completely,
views. Yes.
I completely agree with you that things. I mean, uh, unfortunately, the differences are becoming so much more pronounced that it's scary.
Exactly.
From the kind of background we all are coming from a very secular background, it's very scary. But at the same time, I think when I meet young people today, I wonder whether it really these differences specifically in terms of religion. I think that's the thing that's coming up the most in our country today. Whether it really bothers them, or is it more and more pronounced today, which is political, and what we see in the media that really makes a small thing blow out of proportion.
Exactly.
It's all about a good news and a bad news. How much are we blowing a good news out of proportion, and how much are we blowing a bad news out of proportion? So I think one thing is the political and the media part. Coming as educators, what is
Exactly.
it that we can do?
Exactly.
As educators, our first and prime role is always to be secular, always to teach children to respect each other's religion. And I think something that we can really do, which happens in a lot of progressive countries in the world, is bring in religious studies in the school. I have tried it once. It didn't work very well, probably because of a want of a good curriculum, but I'm seriously planning to do that. When you talk about religious studies in schools, you actually teach children in depth about every religion. So, when as a teacher, I teach a child about the best and the right things, or actually, for in every religion, there's always right. When you teach them in depth about the Islamic religion, about the Hindu religion, about the Buddhist, about all religions, and the fact to be different is okay, and you have to accept people with differences, and if people are different, they are not bad, they're just
Absolutely.
different, and you have to
Absolutely.
accept it. So if we play this role of ours as educators in the classroom, and if all of us can bring in religious studies into our school, I think that's going to make a lot of difference. And when children learn this in their formative years, I think it stays with them for life, for life. So I think this is our role to play as educators.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for taking up that question as well, because I think that was a little offbeat, but I think you really answered it to the level that even exactly the way I think about it, that, I mean, we need to learn to appreciate the diversity of people at the end of the day. Not everyone will come with the same opinion what we hold, or maybe have the same faith. Exactly. And the beauty of our nation is this, that we appreciate diversity. I mean, no country is more diverse than ours. And in the sense, we have to, I mean, preserve this beauty of our country, which is diversity of opinions and everything else for that matter.
So I just wanted to even add, it's got
Sure,
nothing
sure.
to do with
Please,
the
please.
previous question because of the two words that are coming to my mind. One is the diversity, and the other is collaboration, which I thought I'd mentioned, but I forgot to. So because all of us are educators here. When you read this book, which is From Good to Great, right? Jim Collins. It's such a wonderful book where it talks about how do you hire, and it says in that book that it's very important to have a diverse team
Absolutely.
in a school. I can't have somebody like me. I should not have somebody like me, because if there's somebody like me, then where's the diversity? Where are the different opinions? Where are different minds working? So I think it is important to even hire a team with differences and diversity and teach your team to be working as a team and every individual being a team player. For success, diversity and collaboration, working together, is actually the mantra. You have to have both of them working hand in hand if you need success in, I think, every field that you work in. It doesn't have to mean only
Absolutely, because I mean, we at one place we are teaching our kids to be global citizens, and when you are a global citizen, you will sit with people with diverse color, race, religion, for that matter. And if you're not really brought up in the sense, you can't appreciate that. Sadly, you won't be a team player, and you can't really thrive from there on. Yes.
You shouldn't clone.
Yeah,
It's not a good
absolutely.
idea.
Absolutely, wonderful, absolutely. And thank you very much for taking up this question as well, which was, I mean, actually, it is something which is really, really bothering me for a while now. I also intend to work, and I think you will be one of the person I'll fall back to. Religious studies is something which we can develop as well, and let's just see how we will fall. Anyway, any other question on? And we still have 3 more minutes. If you have a question or an observation, or you have to just say anything, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll say thank you to each one of you. Okay, Trilokji, wonderful. Good to see you.
A very good evening. I must say, Gauravji, you bring such wonderful things on the floor. And Amrita Burman, ma'am, listening to you is always something new learning for all of
Thank you.
us. And as you said that, this religious learnings can be introduced. We have started with the citizenship studies and the C learning in our school. C learning is socio-emotional and ethical learning, and the citizenship has been made we have created a curriculum for that, where we talk about who am I, how I connect with my community. So that, it's a alternate for the religious studies only. In a different way, we are percolating down to the children that how to have the intercultural relationships. Like 2 of our girls have gone under the EFS scholarship to Japan for 9 months.
Yeah.
So 9 months they will study there, and their attendance will be marked from whatever the attendance they give there will consider that. So I think these are these intercultural exchanges or the citizenship studies, not exactly the religious studies only, because sometimes people have a different mindset. The words really play a big game in the minds of the people. So I think these are the suggestions, and listening to you was a treat to the ears and was really wonderful. Thank you, Gauravji, for bringing her on the floor. And she is a encyclopedia of the school education system. Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you
Burman. Thank you so much.
And Trilokji, since you're also an AFS chapter, and so are we, so I think it's a good idea that your school and our school could do a little, domestic exchange also.
Exchange.
Yes.
We can.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for Trilokji as well for that question or an observation which he shared with all of us. So now, I think anyone else, before I say bye-bye, or to all of you, in fact, right? So firstly, my sincere thank you to Mrs. Burman. Always, as I said, I've already said this, but at the cost of repeating myself, I say thank you very much. Pleasure to have begun our IPN podcast with you as our first guest. Obviously, my dear friends, this was our first attempt. We were, and I always say this, we were doing it after almost 4 to 5 months. We are sketchy, but then that's the way we possibly become better from there on, right? So having said this, I sincerely thank each one of you who took out time to be with us today, this evening. I'm sure we really made valuable inputs or possibly shared some point which will help you out in the longer run. For that, I think Mrs. Burman should be thanked. She is obviously available on the LinkedIn and etc. all other platforms. You should connect with her. Trust me, having known her, if you really want to know from her anything for that matter, she'll be very open to share that with, well, apart from this session, I mean to say, because this is just the start of the conversation with her. And having said this, I will quickly share this again, that if you feel anyone who you would love to listen in on IPN podcast, please do recommend those names. We will invite them and we will ask them the same question which we asked Mrs. Burman, maybe more or less, maybe, right? And having said this, have a great evening ahead. I will be coming to Hyderabad in a couple of days, so I will see leaders from there as well. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Burman. Pleasure. And I really, really say this, everything which you said possibly is not just your experience, but you spoke from your heart. That is the most important part. Thank you very much. So take care.
So
everybody had a great good evening, everyone. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. A privilege. Thank you.